All right, we are going to be looking at some other things we can do with quadratics. Today we are going to be looking at finding roots of quadratics by completing the square. So just kind of a funny little joke to start with, and here we go. So the first thing I want you to do is to solve this equation. And we have done one similar to this before, but obviously you want the part that's squared isolated. So you need that piece that's been squared isolated and nothing else with it on the other side. So like if I had a plus 3 right here, I would need to move that 3 over to the other side first. But once I get there, then what I want to do is I want to take the square root of both sides, and those will just undo each other. But remember that when you take, if it starts with something that's squared and then you take the square root, you need a plus or minus in front of it. So the square root of 16 would either be plus or minus 4. And then of course I will subtract 3 from both sides, and I will get x equals negative 3 plus or minus 4. Okay? And what that really means is you're going to have two equations. You're going to have negative 3 plus 4 as one of your answers, which of course is 1. And then you'll have negative 3 minus 4 as one of your answers, which of course is negative 7. Okay? And that's how those will work. Those were nice whole numbers, easy to work with. It was great. Okay? Moving on, making it just a tiny little bit harder. Again, the part that has the square root in it has already been isolated. If, let's say, you had something down here, like a 3, then you would need to multiply both sides by 3 like that and get it to drop, just so you know, because that might come up in your accelerated math. But it's not here. The part that's been squared is isolated, so I take the square root of both sides. Those will just simply undo each other, and I will have x minus 4 equals, do not forget the positive or negative in front of there. Super common mistake, the square root of 20. Now, the square root of 20 is not a whole number, and if it's not a whole number, you need to see if you can break it down. Sometimes you can't break it down, but the square root of 20 can be broken down into 4 and 5, which of course we know is 2 root 5. Okay? So this becomes x minus 4 equals positive or negative 2 root 5. And then I add 4 to both sides. So when I add 4 to both sides, I will get 4 plus or minus 2 root 5. Now I'm fine with for me, if you leave your answer like this, okay? Accelerated math probably will give it to you like this. They'll go x plus 2 root 5 comma, or not x, 4 minus 2 root 5. So they will probably list them separately like that, but it means the same thing, okay? All right, and by the way, on this one back here, I factored it. Okay, you could factor it. Yeah, it's x minus 4 times x minus 4 equals 20, which is fabulous. Okay, this one, if I try to factor this, and I try to go like this, I could go x minus, well, I could go x minus 2 and x plus 10. And so I know that it does factor. Okay, it does factor, but it doesn't factor so that I have the same thing both places. I have x minus 2 and I have x plus 10. I don't have the same quantity both places. So that doesn't help me very much. I want to show you how to solve something by completing the square today. So this is what I want you to do. Okay? When you're completing a square, if this is not something that is a quantity squared like that, I just tried to factor it and it was not the same quantity squared, then in order to solve it by completing the square, this is what you do. You need to take this constant and you need to move it to the other side. So I'm going to add 20, obviously. And then I will have this, x squared plus 8x plus, and I'm going to leave this blank right now. I have nothing else added right here. I could fill it in with 0 right now, and then I would have equals 20. Okay, and then I'm actually going to put a blank back here. So if you did not have that before, you probably had it blank like this and blank like this, and that's all you had. And now I'm asking you to take a spot and put a blank here and put a blank here. What I want to do is I want to put a number in this spot that will allow me to factor this side right here as a perfect square. In other words, as something like x minus 4 squared, like that, or whatever the quantity would be. But I have the same number twice. Okay, that's my goal. And so I am going to, first of all, clear this so that it's not such a mess. Here's what you do. Okay, you take half of the middle number. So half of the middle number is 8 right here. The middle number is 8. Half of that is 4. So I take half of b and I square that quantity. So half of 8 is 4. When I square 4, I get 16. That's what's going to go right here. Now, if I add something to the left side, I have to add something to the right side to keep that equation balanced. Okay? Now, if I try to factor what's over here, you can see that it will factor as x plus 4 times x plus 4, which happens to be x plus 4 quantity squared. Okay? Which is fabulous. I don't even need this step in here. You'll sort of figure out a shortcut in a minute. Then 20 plus 16 is 36, which is great. And now I'm to the point where I was before. Now I can solve this by simply taking the square root of both sides. So I take the square root of both sides. That will undo itself. And I will have x plus 4 equals, the square root of 36 is 6. But remember to put the positive and negative in front of there. And then I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. So I will have negative 4 plus or minus 6. So one of those is negative 4 plus 6, which is 2. And one of those is negative 4 minus 6, which is negative 10. Okay? All right. So again, if I try to factor this right now, I am not going to be able to factor this as a quantity of something squared. So if I want to do this by completing the square, I can't do it. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to move it to the other side, and so my equation will look like this, x squared plus 4x plus, I'm going to need to put something in here, equals, and then when I add 12 to the other side, I will have 12, and then I'm going to put something in here as well. Again, my goal is I'm going to add something in this spot so that when I factor the left side, it can be factored as something squared. Okay? So what you do is you take half of this number. So half of 4 is 2. I square 2, and I get 4. So I add 4 here. And if I add 4 here, I need to add 4 here. Okay? And now if I try to factor this, I can factor it as x plus 2 times x plus 2, which of course we know is x plus 2 squared. And hint, hint, half of 4 is 2. And guess what this is? 2. Okay? And you'll figure out that shortcut in a minute. Or not in a minute, but after a while, after some practice. So I have x plus 2 squared equals, and then 12 plus 4 on that right side is 16. And you're to the point where you can just take the square root of both sides again. So square root of both sides, that undoes itself. And I have x plus 2 equals positive or negative 4. Don't forget those positives and negatives. So I have x equals negative 2 plus or minus 4 when you move that 2 over to the other side. Negative 2 plus 4 is 2. And negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6. Okay, so those are all nice and lovely and wonderful. Okay, now we have to switch things up a little bit and make it just a little bit harder for you. I'm sorry, but we do. So here we go. This time, I want you to know how you feel about fractions. I don't know how you feel about fractions. Oh, this guy says, I love fractions. Not. Okay. Anyways, you're going to have to deal with fractions here. So here we go. We got it. We can do it. We can do it. I know you can. Okay? So here's your goal here. What you want to do is you first of all want to follow the same protocol. You're going to take this constant. You're going to move it to the other side. So I will have 2x squared minus 5x plus my blank in there that I'm going to talk about here in a minute. And then equals negative 3 when I move that to the other side because I will subtract 3. Sorry, dude. Okay, Now, here's the problem. When you complete the square, your a term cannot be anything but 1. Okay? So since your a term can't be anything but 1, you have to factor that 2 out of there. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I need to pull a 2 out of this side of the equation. And when I pull a 2 out, this is the tricky part, this is what it's going to look like. I have to go 2 times, okay, this is no problem. 2 times x squared gives me 2x squared. But I have to figure out 2 times what gives me negative 5x. And basically, you're going to go like this. Because these two 2's will cancel each other out now. So when I pull a 2 out, I have to pull out a 2 in the bottom to kind of cancel it out with. So 2 times negative 5x is negative 5 halves x, okay? And then I have my blank in here. And then I have my negative 3, plus my blank. Okay, now, this gets kind of icky, but we can do it. You need to figure out what half of that bottom, or half of that middle number is. Here's my middle number. So half of negative 5x, negative 5 halves. Negative 5 halves times 1 half is negative 5 fourths. Okay, just so you know. Negative 5 halves times 1 half is negative 5 fourths. Now you're going to take that number and you're going to square it. And when I square negative 5 fourths, negative 5 squared is 25 and 4 squared is 16. Okay? That's the number that's going to go right here. So that's fabulous. Okay, but now be careful because over here is not going to be 25/16. Over here is going to be 2 times 25/16. And 2 over 1 times 25/16 will be 50/16. Okay, this will be 50/16 right here. So that's the piece that people forget, is to multiply this by 2. Multiply that 2 out in front. Oops, I didn't mean to erase that. I had my eraser picked up. Sorry. But they forget to multiply that 2 that's out in front. I'm going to erase this just so it looks a little neater. Okay, now, here we go. I have this 2 out in front. And then remember, you're going to get this by finding half of that middle number. Half of negative 5 halves is negative 5 fourths. So this is going to be negative 5 fourths squared. And then I need to take negative 3 plus 50/16. So you can do that on your calculator, negative 3 plus 50/16, or you can get a common denominator. Negative 3 would be the same as negative 48/16. So then you have negative 48/16 plus 50/16, and negative 48 plus 50 would give you 2/16. And 2/16 reduces to 1/8. Okay? So when I take this and this, and I add it together, and get a common denominator and reduce it, I get 1/8. Okay, how are we doing? Isn't this fun? Okay, now I need to get rid of that 2 that's out in front. Okay, so I'm going to multiply by 1/2 over here to get rid of that, and I'm going to multiply by 1/2 here and simplify that. So now I have x minus 5 fourths squared equals 1/16. All right, we're getting there, you guys. Square root both sides. Those cancel each other out. And I have x minus 5 fourths equals. Don't be freaked out by this fraction. Again, you need the plus or minus, but the square root of 1/16 is really the square root of 1, which is 1, over the square root of 16, which is 4. Okay, we're almost there. I add 5 fourths. So when I add 5 fourths, I will have 5 fourths plus or minus 1/4. Okay, and I have a common denominator, which is fabulous. So what this really is, it's really 5 plus 1 over 4 and 5 minus 1 over 4. Well, 5 plus 1 over 4 is 6 fourths, which of course we know is 3 halves. And 5 minus 1 is 4 fourths over 4, or 4 over 4, and of course we know that that's 1. Whew, we did it. And you're probably feeling a little lost, and we probably need to kind of do another one, or at least get you started on another one, kind of like that, so that you don't have to be so worried about that. Okay, so we'll do another one like that, because I know that that's probably you're not feeling very comfortable. Okay, so we're going to do again. You're going to take the 1, you're going to add it over. Okay, so I will have 3x squared minus 2x. I'm going to put my plus my blank in here, equals, when I add 1, I will have 1 plus a blank. Okay, then again, your a, or your number in front of your x squared, cannot be anything but 1. So if it is something but 1, you have to factor that out. So I pull a 3 out. Okay, and then I'm going to have x squared here. And then 3 times what gives me negative 2x, and that will be negative 2/3 x. Because if I distribute this times this right now, my 3's would just cancel each other out, and I would just be left with that negative 2x, which is exactly what I need. So I have negative 2/3 x there, plus my blank, equals 1 plus my blank. All right, this is kind of the tricky part. So off to the side here, I need to take half of this number right here. So half of negative 2/3 will be negative 2/3. I'm going to just show you this. Negative 2/3 times 1/2. My 2's cancel. I get negative 1/3. Okay, and by the way, that's the number that's going to go right here, x minus 1/3. Then I'm going to square that number. And when I square negative 1/3, negative 1 squared is 1. 3 squared is 9. So I get 1/9 right there. Okay, I square that number, and that's what goes right here. Okay, and you know what? I realized I didn't bring this 3 down. I pulled a 3 out of here, and I think I erased it accidentally. Okay, now, you got to be careful, because over here is not going to be 1/9. Over here has to be 3 times 1/9. And 3 times 1/9, obviously that becomes a 3, and this becomes a 1, is 1/3. Okay, so 3 times 1/9 is 1/3. All right, so on the right, I need to add 1 plus 1/3. So I'm going to change this 1 to 3 over 3. So 3/3 plus 1/3 is 4/3. And you know what? I messed up, didn't I? No, I didn't. I didn't mess up. I did the same thing I did again. But I keep forgetting this 3 there, you guys. Scream and yell and holler at me. I need students here to help me. Anyways, there we go. 3 times 1/3. There we go. Sorry. Okay, now, I can't have that 3 right there, though. I was a step ahead of myself. And so I need to divide by 3 or multiply by 1/3. I'm going to multiply this side by 1/3 so that it cancels, and I'm going to multiply this side by 1/3 because I need to have this piece that's been squared isolated. Okay? So now I'm going to have x minus 1/3 squared equals 4/3 times 1/3 is 4/9. All right, now I take the square root of both sides. Again, that just simply undoes itself. So x minus 1/3 equals, you can't forget the positives and negatives over here. The square root of 4 is 2, and the square root of 9 is 3. So I add 1/3, and I'll have 1/3 plus or minus 2/3. Okay, I have common denominators, which is fabulous. So basically I have 1 plus 2 divided by 3. And I have 1 minus 2 divided by 3. So 1 plus 2 is 3 over 3, which we know is 1. And 1 minus 2 is negative 1 over 3, which we know is negative 1/3. Okay, we are actually going to skip number 7, and we're going to go to number 8 really quickly. And this will be our last one that we are going to do. Actually, I'm going to do number 8 instead. Okay, so here we go. Number 8, or number 7, I mean. We're going to do number 7 because I want to show you one other thing that happens. So I subtract 19, and I'll have x squared plus 2x plus my blank equals negative 19, and then plus my blank. Okay, so I need to take half of 2, so half of 2 is 1. Square that number. Half of 2 is 1. 1 squared is 1. And again, if you need to see this, like I'm putting in a number here so that I can factor this as x plus 1 times x plus 1, just so you know. Okay, or you can take that shortcut and go right there. X plus 1 squared. Okay, if I add 1 right here, I have to add 1 here. And so then now I have negative 18 when I add negative 19 plus 1. I am going to take the square root of both sides. Those undo itself. Now, the square root of 18, first of all, I have an I in there. And so I need to pluck out that I. And then, of course, 18 is the same as 9 times 2, which is 3 root 2. But because of that negative, I need an I with it. So I'll have 3I root 2. So I have imaginary numbers here, and that's okay. But I'm going to subtract 1, and I'll have x equals negative 1 plus or minus, and I forgot my plus or minus, you guys, plus or minus 3I root 2. Okay? I can't really simplify that. Some people think I can add the negative 1 plus the 3 and make it be 2I root 2, and then negative 1 minus 3 and make it negative 4I root 2. But you can't combine those, so this is all you can do. For me, this is fine. Accelerated math may write it as negative 1 plus 3I root 2, and then negative 1 minus 3I root 2, just so you know. They might list both of them, but for me, it's fine to have it like that. So hopefully this will be okay for you, and we will see you soon.